The far northwest of Canada, the Klondike. Here in 1896, George Washington Carmack struck gold. As news reached the outside world, a stampede followed. 1 million made plans to join the rush for gold. 100,000 set out. Only 40,000 made it. Some found a fortune. Others turned back empty-handed. But without exception, they were completely unprepared for the severity of the winter in the Klondike.
Come on, Pepper. Come on! Come on!
The man was a newcomer to the land, a Chichaco, one of many, dragged from every corner of the world by the news of the Klondike strike. This was his first winter. The trouble with him was that he was without imagination. He was quick and alert in the things of life, but only in the things, not in the significances. The tremendous cold made no impression on the man. 50 degrees below zero meant 80-odd degrees of frost. Such a fact impressed him as being cold and uncomfortable, and that was all. It did not lead him to meditate upon his frailty as a creature of temperature, and upon man's frailty in general, able only to live within certain narrow limits of heat and cold. 50 degrees below zero stood for a bite of frost that hurt, and that must be guarded against by the use of ear-flap mittens, thick socks, and warm moccasins. 50 degrees below zero. That there should be anything more to it than that was a thought that never entered his head. North and south, as far as he could see, the river Yukon was unbroken white, save for a dark hairline that curved and twisted. This was the trail, the main trail that led 500 miles to the Chilkoot Pass, Dyea, and Salt Water, and that led north 70 miles to Dawson and still on to the north, 1,000 miles and half 1,000 more to the Bering Sea. He knew that at 50 below, spittle crackled on the snow. But this had crackled in the air. Undoubtedly, it was colder than 50 below. How much colder? He did not know. But the temperature didn't matter. He was bound for the old claim on the left fork of Henderson Creek, where the boys were already. He'd be in camp by 6 o'clock. A bit after dark, it was true, but the boys would be there. A fire would be going, and a hot supper would be ready. The trail was faint. He was glad he was without a sled traveling light. In fact, he carried nothing but his lunch, wrapped in a handkerchief inside his shirt. It was the only way to keep the biscuits from freezing. He was surprised, however, at the cold. At the man's heels trotted a dog, a big native husky. The animal was depressed by the tremendous cold. It knew that it was no time for traveling. Its instinct told it a truer tale than was told to the man by the man's judgment. In reality, it was not merely colder than 50 below zero. It was colder than 60 below, than 70 below. It was 75 below zero. Since the freezing point is 32 above zero, it meant that 107 degrees of frost obtained. The dog did not know anything about thermometers. It had learned fire, knew that the man was a fire provider. So it wanted fire, or else to burrow under the snow and cuddle its warmth away from the air. This was Henderson Creek, and he knew that he was 10 miles from the forks. He was making 4 miles an hour, and he calculated that he would arrive at the forks at 12:30. The man held steadily on. He was not much given to thinking, and just then particularly had nothing to think about, save that he'd eat lunch at the forks, and at 6 o'clock he'd be in camp with the boys. Once in a while, that thought reiterated itself that it was very cold, and that he had never experienced such cold. But rub as he would, the instant he stopped, his cheekbones went numb. And the following instant, the end of his nose went numb. Plus, it didn't matter. A bit painful, that was all. Empty as the man's mind was of thoughts, he was keenly observant, and he noticed the changes in the creeks, the curves and bends and timber jams, and always he sharply noted where he placed his feet. The creek, he knew, was frozen clear to the bottom. But he also knew that there were springs that bubbled out from the hillside. The coldest snaps never froze these springs. Sometimes they were obvious, sometimes they were traps. They hid pools of water that might be 3 inches deep, or 3 feet. He stood and studied the creek bed and its banks, and listened to the crackle of a snow-hidden ice skin. To get his feet wet in such a temperature meant trouble and danger. At the very least, it meant delay, for he would be forced to stop and build a fire, and under its protection to bare his feet while he dried his socks and moccasins.
Goddamn son of a bitch, you.
Once clear of the danger, he swung along at his 4-mile gait. In the course of the next 2 hours, he came upon several similar traps. Usually the snow above the pools had a sunken, candied appearance that advertised danger. And once, suspecting the stretch of creek in front of him, he compelled the dog to go on in front.
Pepper. Come on, Pepper. Come on. That's a boy. You come here. Come on. That's it. Go on. Go on. Go forward. Go on, Pepper. Go forward. Go forward now. Go. Go. Go on. Go on, Pepper. Get going. Get going. Get going, you cursed mammal. Get going. Go on, Pepper. That's it.
The dog made quick efforts to lick the ice off its legs and paws. This was a matter of instinct. To permit the ice to remain would mean sore feet. Did not know this, it merely obeyed the mysterious prompting that arose from the deep crypts of its being. But the man knew, having achieved a judgment on it. He did not expose his fingers more than a minute, and was astonished at the swift numbness that smote him. It was certainly cold. At 12:30 to the minute, he arrived at the forks of the creek. He was pleased at the speed he had made. If he kept it up, he would certainly be with the boys by 6. So long as he walked at 4 miles an hour, he pumped the blood willy-nilly to the surface. But now, the instant he stopped, it ebbed away. The numbness was seeping back into the exposed fingers. Also, he noticed that the stinging that had first come to his toes when he sat down was already passing away. He wondered whether the toes were warm or numb. The old-timer from Sulphur Creek had spoken the truth when telling how cold it sometimes got in the country, and he'd laughed at him at the time. That showed one must not be too sure of things. There was no mistake about it. It was cold. He'd better build a fire. Thawed. The flame he got by touching a match to a small shred of birch bark. This burned even more readily than paper.
Come on, Pepper. Come on, Pepper, you lazy slug. Come on.
The dog was disappointed and yearned back towards the fire. This man did not know cold. But the dog knew. All its ancestry knew. And it had inherited the knowledge. And it knew that it was not good to walk abroad. in such fearful cold. It was not concerned in the welfare of the man, it was for its own sake that it yearned back toward the fire.
Pepper! Come here.
This would delay him an hour, for he'd have to build a fire and dry out his footgear. This was imperative at this low temperature, he knew that much.
Numbskull! Numbskull! Stupid!
The man worked slowly and carefully, keenly aware of his danger. Gradually, as the flame grew stronger, he increased the size of the twigs with which he fed it. He knew there must be no failure. When it is 75 below zero, a man must not fail in his first attempt to build a fire. That is, if his feet are wet. If his feet are dry and he fails, he can run along the trail for half a mile and restore his circulation. But the circulation of wet and freezing feet cannot be restored by running. No matter how fast he runs, the wet feet will freeze the harder. All this the man knew. The old-timer on Sulphur Creek had told him about it the previous fall, and now he was appreciating the advice. Already, all sensation had gone out of his feet, and in building the fire, his fingers had quickly gone numb. But he was safe. Toes and nose and cheeks would only be touched by the frost, but the fire was beginning to burn with strength. another 5 minutes, he could remove his wet footgear. The fire was a success. He was safe. He remembered the advice of the old-timer on Sulphur Creek. The old-timer had been very serious in laying down the law that no man must travel alone in the Klondike after 50 below. Well, here he was. He'd had the accident. He was alone. And he had saved himself. All a man has to do is to keep his head, and he's all right. Any man who's a man to travel alone. But he had not thought his fingers could go lifeless so short a time. The wires were pretty well down between him and his finger ends. Perhaps the old-timer on Sulphur Creek was right. If he'd only had a trail mate, he would have been in no danger now. The trail mate could have built a fire. Well, it was up to him to build the fire over again, and the second time, there must be no failure. Even if he succeeded, he would most likely lose some toes. His feet must be badly frozen by now, and there'd be some time before the second fire was ready. Such were his thoughts. But he did not sit and think them. He was busy all the time they were passing through his mind. He made a new foundation for the fire, this time in the open, where no treacherous tree could blot it out. All the while the dog sat and watched him, a certain yearning wistfulness in its eyes, for it looked upon him as the fire provider. And the fire was slow in coming. He knew the bark was there, though he could not feel it with his fingers. Try as he would, he could not clutch hold of it. And all the time in his consciousness was the knowledge that each instant his feet were freezing. This thought tended to put him in a panic, but he fought against it, kept calm. As he beat and threshed with his arms and hands, felt a great surge of envy as he regarded the creature that was warm and secure in its natural covering. After a time, he was aware of the first faraway signals of sensation in his beaten fingers. The faint tingling grew stronger until it evolved into a stinging ache that was excruciating. The dead fingers could neither touch nor clutch. He was very careful. He drove the thought of his freezing feet and nose and cheeks out of his mind, devoting his whole soul to the matches. The old-timer on Sulphur Creek was right, he thought, after 50 below. A man should travel with a partner. The sight of the dog put a wild idea into his head. He remembered the tale of a man caught in a blizzard who killed a steer and crawled inside the carcass and so was saved.
Come here, boy.
He would bury his hands in the dog's warm body until the numbness went from him. Then he would build another fire.
Come on, boy. Come on, Pepper. Pepper. Pepper, come here. Come here, Pepper. Pepper. You come here or I'll whoop you. You do as I say.
He realized he could not kill the dog. With his helpless hands, he could neither draw nor hold his sheath knife, nor throttle the animal. A certain fear of death, dull and oppressive, came to him. He realized that it was no longer a mere matter of freezing his fingers and toes or of losing his hands and feet, but it was a matter of life and death, and the chances against him. This threw him into a panic, and he turned and ran blindly without intention in fear such as he had never known in his life. Running made him feel better. He did not shiver. Maybe if he ran on, his feet would thaw out, and anyway, if he ran far enough, he would reach camp. And the boy. It struck him as curious that he could run at all on feet so frozen that he could not feel them when they struck the earth and took the weight of his body. He seemed to himself to skim along above the surface and to have no connection with the earth. Somewhere he had once seen a winged Mercury, and he wondered if Mercury felt as he felt when he skimmed over the earth. As he regained his breath, he noted that he was feeling quite warm and comfortable. It even seemed that a warm glow had come to his chest and trunk. And yet, when he touched his nose and cheeks, there was no sensation. Running would not thaw them out. Then the thought came to him that the frozen portions of his body must be extending. He tried to keep this thought down to think something else, but the thought asserted itself and persisted until it produced a vision of his body totally frozen. This was too much. He made another wild run along the trail. He'd been making a fool of himself, running around like a chicken with his head cut off. He was bound to freeze anyway, and he might as well take it decently. Good idea, he sought to sleep off to death. It was like taking an anesthetic. Freezing's not so bad as people thought. There were lots worse ways to die.
You was right, old timer. You was right.
The dog sat and waited. There were no signs of a fire to be made. Besides, never in the dog's experience had it known a man to sit like that in the snow and make no fire. But the man remained silent. As the twilight drew on, the dog's eager yearning for the fire mastered it. It caught the scent of death and backed away. A little longer it delayed. Then it turned and trotted up the trail in the direction of the camp it knew. Where were the other food and fire providers?